I'm going to talk really a lot from the heart. I'm going to do it through experience. So a couple things that I always like to do, and I'm fortunate to be toward the end of this program, is I made some commentary to myself so that I won't forget what happened today. There's a few things that happened. We talked about communications as being really, really important. And by evidence of this meeting, there were a lot of communicators here. Talked a lot about change. Anybody involved in change of any sort in their personal or professional life? Most of this was a professional discussion. By the way, the thing I'm going to change is how I communicate with my wife. That breakout we had, that was what I was thinking about. I was thinking more about my wife than my professional experiences, which I think anybody in relationships can do a good job or a better job of that. Approach matters. That's another takeaway for me. Data and facts. Thank you guys for your conversation there. Talked a lot about talent. The other thing is there are an incredible amount of resources available to us, some in the room and some not. By the way, this is an entrepreneurial experience that you had today. Lyft is a startup. That's pretty cool. So you're the first customers of this really cool thing. I think that's pretty awesome. And then trust and confidence. So that's how I kind of walked away with my frame from today. I created a framework as I was sitting there. The guys at the table were saying, are you writing your speech as you're sitting here? No, I did prepare. But I thought you could walk away with something that would be really helpful to you. So flip over a little piece of paper or find a little white piece of paper and draw a grid. Upper left quadrant, write the word word. Next quadrant to the right, write the word values. Bottom first quadrant, write curiosity. And then the final quadrant, write one thing. At the top, write the word experience. And at the bottom, write the word story. You're going to take away from this. You're going to fill this quadrant in as we go through. You might not do it this very moment, but you will. So that's where I'd like you to take this conversation. I always start any discussion that I have with a story. And I had an amazing experience last week. Has anybody ever taken a backroads trip? Anybody ever done that? So I rode, 230 miles last week with 139 people. Really amazing, healthy people. It was just an extraordinary experience. And I was very taken by the importance of that time that I had with my wife. And also the fact that I've never been to a camp. I always wanted to go to a camp when I was a kid. So I went to an adult camp, essentially. And 20-somethings were actually the camp counselors for a bunch of middle-aged people. So it was kind of cool. But then something totally unexpected happened. On the last day of the trip, I was probably at my peak. I was just having so much fun. And I got a text. And the text said, Uncle Joe, last night my mother passed away in her sleep. That was my sister, my only sister, my sibling, my backseat partner, the person that only she and I knew the stories that happened in our youth. And she was gone, like that, of a heart attack at the age of 64. So here I go from like the happiest moment, one of the happiest moments as a middle-aged guy on kind of a pinnacle, to one of the most depressing possible communications. So I thought to myself, wow, what does that mean to me? And how does that actually relate to this situation? Why do you think it relates to this situation? Anybody have a thought? It's because crap happens to everybody. Everybody. Everybody's facing good stuff and bad stuff. And we can do all the things that we talked about this morning, but if we don't ask the simple question, how are you doing? How's your life going? Where are you right now? All the things that we want to accomplish professionally go out the window because we really need to connect with the heart of the people that we care most about in our businesses. And so I tell you that story not as a downer. I tell you that story as more of a reality check about how our lives actually affect our ability to succeed in business. And it's coincidence because I talked to my sister about this presentation I was doing, and of course, my sister, her name's Sheila, which, by the way, the woman that checked me in this morning was, last night was Sheila also, so that's kind of a God thing, I think. Made me feel good. And we talked about this, and she was kind of giving me a kick in the butt, and she liked the let's go thing, so I'm going to continue to drive this. So I believe we have to create the environment where dialogue leads to impact. If we don't create the right environment, that's where the safe piece is. So I feel safe sharing a very, very, very emotional and vulnerable thing with you. Why do you think that is? Because I've gotten to know this audience today by sitting at the table and hearing the stories and having a bit of interaction, and I know there's some really, really good people here. So I feel confident in sharing that with you. But we have to create that environment in business. If we don't create that environment, none of this other stuff matters. So we create the safe environment. I was an engineer when I started my career, chemical engineer. I came out, if we create a physically safe environment in manufacturing, we are good to go. This guy, Billy Mulroy, huge guy, taught me how to do fork truck training. Anybody ever driven a fork truck? Yeah, and if you ever driven over a piece of pallet on a fork truck, there's no suspension. It's like one of the worst moments of your life. So Billy said, get in the fork truck, Joe. I'm 24 years old, a highly educated engineer. He said, he was a high school grad. He said, I'm going to teach you a couple things. So I get in there, and he said, I want you to drive over that piece of piece of wood. I do, and I'm like, oh my God. And he said, exactly. It's the simple things. Never forgot that. But as I grew in my career, as I became a manager and had the opportunity to lead, I realized it wasn't just physical safety. It was also emotional safety. Emotional safety is, I actually care about your feelings. I may not be the most empathetic person because empathy requires you to see the world as the other person does, but through experiences, I can get closer. And the only way that I'm going to know if I have a common experience is to get in a real, passionate, caring dialogue with you. So I'm going to do that. So we have to have this emotional safety. That's uncomfortable. It's very uncomfortable, and it's okay. The other thing is intellectual safety. I mentor a woman in Dayton, Ohio, Jess Blimbaum. She's having her second baby. I'm so proud of her. She calls me her work dad. I call her my work daughter. And she told me, Joe, I'm only 28 years old, but I have a lot of experience too. I said, that's a really good point. I think generally people assume older people are the ones that hold the experience. But actually, just by breathing, we have experience. So the key for us is to accept that people do have experience. It could be educational, formal. It could be business. It could be work. And we have the responsibility to bring that out and allow for that in a safe environment. So physical safety, emotional safety, intellectual safety. And then the final one, and this has been talked about a little bit, is cyber safety. People freak out about their data now. I mean, whoever thought in a business environment people would be really freaking out about their health care, their data and stuff? Well, they do. People get really nervous. Someone gets their identity stolen and is an employee of your company, that's a big deal. If you happen to be in a business where you're holding other companies' data and you don't do that right and you have a breach, that's a big deal. So all of these things have to be combined, and I call it the diamond. It's not a diamond here. I kind of like the pictures a little better. But if we can do this well, create a physically safe environment, emotional safety, intellectual safety, and understand cyber safety, we create an environment where people can actually be who they are. Does that make sense? And that's a real thing we can do. It's hard. I think you heard from some people already today where there's a process we can use to assist others in getting there. The next thing is around clarity. So clarity is an interesting thing. That's why I gave you that grid. Don't write 17 words in each of those quadrants. Kind of keep it simple. Clarity requires focus. How many people would say that their business is totally focused? Yeah? How many people? Yes, I mean, it's hard. And if you're going to achieve things, you got to be focused and then keep it really, 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 really simple. And it's hard to create simplicity. It's really difficult. So you have to write it down. I'm a whiteboard guy. One of the things that I always used to do is I think out loud. Does anybody ever think out loud? So what do you think thinking out loud does to your team? Confuses the hell out of them, right? So people used to come to me all the time and say, Joe, will you stop thinking out loud? I can't. I mean, what am I supposed to do? So then I would go for a walk, and that didn't help me. So what I started to do was I would write my thoughts on the whiteboard. And then I'd have meetings in my office, one-on-ones, group team meetings. And what I was watching is people were looking at what was on my mind. And then they would take it away, and then they'd come back later and say, hey, I was thinking about that. And I wasn't distracting them in that way. So it's just a little tool, little idea. But if we want to achieve, we really do have to focus, simplify, and that will equal achievement. Alignment. So this is where my sarcasm, I'm from outside of Boston, love the Celtics t-shirt. It's pretty great. So when I was growing up, when I first became a manager, I remember they did a survey. It was a paper survey. And the results came back and said, the management's not visible. Like, oh, okay. What do you think management did at that moment? Anybody have an idea? Management by walking around. Stupid concept. Pissed me off. So I'm in my cube. What do you think my boss does? He comes out, leans over my cube, and I'm like, what are you doing, Les? Why are you here? What do you need? This is so disruptive. I'm really busy. Well, the survey said we need to be more visible, so I figured if I started with you, you would probably talk to people that, I'm out in my office and walking around. No, that's really ridiculous. You're just really annoying me. So what is better, and I wouldn't say that I came up with this at the moment, but what is better is management by walking. So I invited the people that had the greatest perspective to go for a walk. You know what it's like to go for a walk? You see stuff. People talk about stuff. It's disarming. It's fun, right? I used to do that all the time at Standard Register when I was CEO up there, and I'd take people, just go outside for 45 minutes. And it was great. So I'm not a big fan of management by walking, as you probably, being visible. I think you have to mean it. And if you don't mean it, then it's really a problem. So in the previous slide, I had a triangle. I don't know if you picked up on that, but it has simplicity, customer, and culture, because those are the three things that I think are most important in a people-centric business. But you'll notice there's a triangle at the bottom here wrapped by curiosity. So curiosity is a really interesting thing, and write down what you're most curious about. This would be a good moment to do that. Curiosity is not asking questions that you really don't care about the answers to. Curiosity is actually knowing enough to be purposeful in the interaction that you're having with someone. So people pretty much, you can kind of know when someone is just asking questions because someone told them to. Or they really don't care about the answers because, I got another meeting, but hey, that's really nice. Where'd you get that sweater? That's awesome. I love that. Hey, how's that project going? Great. I'm glad it's green. That's not what curiosity is about. Curiosity is about going deeper, really understanding what's going on. And you have to really care in order for that to happen. That gets us closer to the empathy discussion. Inspiration. So how do you get really excited? Are you guys excited? I mean, seriously, are you excited about what you do? Yeah? Why? Why are you excited about what you do?
I get to meet people like this.
You get to meet cool people. Cool people every day of your life. What other reasons? Impact the world. Fix problems. I traveled for 3 days in former communist countries. Most of those people are not inspired. They live in a really difficult time. We don't have that. We're in a beautiful place right now with wicked smart people that have told amazing stories that we can use bits and pieces of to create a better outcome for us. That, to me, is pretty awesome. That is really awesome. And we need to be excited about that. But you can't just be emotional. You got to do stuff. You really have to do stuff as well. So I'm a big fan, and this has come out in a variety of different ways. I always hated the scales, like 1 to 10, 1 to 5, because everybody ended up right in the middle, or they were really exceptional, or they were out of the business. I always liked the check plus minus system. You did it, you exceeded it, or you suck. Well, we suck together. Maybe we start there, and if we can't get you past the suck stage, then maybe you can't stay. But we have to get it simple, because that's really what the conversation is anyway. It's not about the numbers. It's about, did we achieve it, didn't we achieve it, or did we exceed it? The other thing that's really interesting to me is how people have a tendency not to talk about the circumstance they were in when they had the success they had. There's a tremendous amount of luck in success. There are wicked smart people that find things that others haven't discovered, and then they put the emphasis toward it. But there's also a lot of luck. You have to be in the right place at a time when someone's interested in what you're doing, and then knowing when to step on the accelerator. The other thing is sometimes you don't step on the accelerator because it's not the right moment and you have to wait for the right timing. And then when you see it, you got to go, kind of like what you guys were talking about. If you had done that right after the concert you went to, it might not have worked out quite the same way, right? Although you probably would have loved some of the legalization of marijuana, not to cast aspersions, that was happening back at that time. That would have been a nice strategic alliance possibly with some of the folks that were in that at that concert at the time. So I think we have to always validate. So we align, keep it really simple, right? We talked about that. You got to be curious. Don't make it up. Just be really purposeful in what you're asking people about. And you got to validate. This gets to the accountability culture that someone was talking about a minute ago. It's actually okay to be accountable. It's actually really okay. In fact, it's a mandate. We don't have businesses if we don't succeed. If we don't make money, we can't invest. If we can't invest, people can't grow. That's one of the problems that small businesses have. It's really hard to prioritize the development of the people when you're trying to survive. So you really need to focus your energy at various stages on the customer, right? So as I think about our process next, I gave you this little matrix, right? So I have this whole feeling about leadership that it's like a pebble in the pond. So the pebble is the message that you create from the experiences that you have. The ripples that occur are how those messages affect the employees of our company. If we walk out of the experiences that we're blessed to be at, not everybody that works for us can be here, and you take that information and you drop it, it's a plop. If you choose to cast it, it will ripple and have an enormous effect. What I ask you to do today is fill out that spreadsheet, that matrix. Drop a couple words in there. Top it off with your experience and go tell a story. Share it with your employees why this was a good use of your time. And maybe one thing that you're going to do a little bit different. But don't hide it. Don't stick it in a folder. Don't leave it in your car. Bring it to the office and talk to people. People want to know that the leaders of their company are investing in things that are going to make us even better than we are today. Let's go.